mental noise dissolution rather than general ambient improvement. Activate frankincense at the sleep threshold by burning a small amount of resin and breathing 3 full deliberate breaths of the aromatic frequency before speaking. You carry the frequency of depth. Every sleep in this space is a theta window that monad activation enters fully. Every practice in this space reaches depth without resistance. The declaration directs the depth frequency toward both sleep field and practice depth specifically. Activate lavender in the sleep space and transition zones by holding the living plant or dried preparation and speaking. You carry the frequency of integration. What activates in this home stays activated. What the practice builds, the field sustains. The transition from activation to ordinary activity carries the monad frequency forward rather than dissolving it. The integration declaration is the most important of the 3 because it is the one that makes the entire architecture durable. Without integration frequency, the clarity and depth layers build states that dissolve rather than establish. Together, the 3 activated plants create a home monad field that compounds with every activation practice the chosen one performs. Practice generates activation. The home field sustains it. The next practice builds on what the sustained field has maintained. Cumulative monad activation rather than activation-dissolution activation cycles. The home as an activation partner rather than a neutral or resistant environment. Here is what chosen ones report when the 3-plant monad activation field is established in the home. First week. The most consistent immediate report is a shift in the baseline quality of the home environment, a clarity and depth that was not present before the plants were placed and activated. Chosen ones describe it as the home feeling different in a way that is difficult to attribute to the plants alone because it is so ambient and continuous. But when they leave the home and return, the difference is immediately perceptible. The home environment has a frequency quality that is absent in other spaces. The first week also shows the initial improvements in practice accessibility, activation reaching depth more quickly, the theta window producing more consistent contact, the mental noise that previously disrupted stillness practice encountering more ambient resistance. First month. The integration frequency from the lavender begins showing its most important effect, activation states persisting through the transition from practice to ordinary daily activity. Chosen ones report that the monad contact achieved during morning theta window practice or dedicated activation sessions carries forward into ordinary morning activity rather than dissolving the moment practice ends. The home ambient is sustaining what the practice builds, and the cumulative effect of a month of sustained activation states, rather than the activation-dissolution cycle of the unprotected home environment, is a baseline monad field that is measurably higher than it was before the plants were established. After 90 days, the 3-plant monad activation field has fully established in the home. The rosemary clarity frequency has become the ambient default of the waking spaces. Chosen ones report that guests notice the quality of the space without being able to identify why. The frankincense depth frequency has shortened the practice time required to reach genuine monad contact states to a fraction of what it previously required. And the lavender integration frequency has made activation persistence the norm rather than the exception. The chosen one returning home from the external demiurgic ambient world and immediately feeling the activation field reinstate as the ambient of their living space. The home has become what Jesus always intended it to be for chosen ones, a continuous monad activation environment that works whether or not the chosen one is consciously practicing. Every activation practice you have ever done at home has been working against the ambient, the demiurgic construction frequency of your walls, your floors, your space, requiring your practice to overcome the default before it could begin building what you were working toward. Every session starting from behind, every activation state dissolving back into demiurgic ambient the moment the practice ended. 3 plants change the entire architecture. Rosemary at the entrance and waking space, creating the clarity frequency that makes activation possible as the ambient default. Frankincense at the sleep space threshold, creating the depth frequency that makes monad contact accessible with a fraction of the previous effort. Lavender in the sleep space and transition zones, creating the integration frequency that makes every activation state persist rather than dissolve. Jesus named these 3 plants to the inner circle because he understood what chosen ones working toward activation in the demiurge's material world most needed. Not more techniques, not more practice, not more effort. A home. A physical living space whose ambient frequency supported the activation rather than resisting it. A place where the chosen one's field could rest in source frequency rather than having to generate it continuously against an opposing default. Your home can be that place. 3 plants. This week. And every activation practice from this moment forward begins not from behind, but from within a field that is already oriented toward exactly what you are working toward. Subscribe to Divine Codes for the complete Home Monad Activation series. Additional plants for specific activation functions, mineral and spatial frequency architecture, and the full home field design that Jesus described to the inner circle for chosen ones living in the material world. Comment activated below. Declare that your home is becoming a monad activation field this week. Every chosen one who establishes this field creates one more point of sustained source frequency in the demiurgic world. A home that activates rather than depletes, that sustains rather than dissolves, that supports the activation that every other teaching in this series is building toward. 3 plants. Your home, starting now.